It all started on a cold, gray morning, the kind of morning that feels heavier than usual, as if the sky itself knows something terrible has happened. My husband had just passed away. The man I had spent more than 30 years of my life with was gone forever. His empty chair at the breakfast table looked back at me, and for the first time, I felt the crushing weight of loneliness. I thought my children would be my comfort in this storm. I thought they would hold me, wipe my tears, and remind me that I wasn't alone, but instead, I noticed something strange in their eyes during the funeral. They weren't just sad. They weren't grieving the way I expected. Behind their tears, I saw something else. Something cold. Something calculating. On the third day after his passing, my oldest son walked into the living room. He didn't sit beside me to ask how I was. No, he stood tall, his arms crossed, and his voice sharp like a knife. "Mom, you can't stay here anymore. This house was Dad's, and now it belongs to us." At first, I laughed through my tears, thinking it was a cruel joke, but the silence in the room was deafening. My other children stood behind him, their faces hard, their eyes filled with greed. My heart sunk. My knees trembled. These were the same children I had carried in my arms, the same children I had stayed awake for night after night when they were sick, the same children I had sacrificed everything for. And now they were looking at me like I was nothing. "Pack your things," my son said, his tone cold and final. "You need to leave." Leave? Leave my own home? The walls that had witnessed my laughter, my tears, the birth of my children, the milestones of my marriage, the home where I had poured my heart and soul for decades? They wanted me out, as if I were a stranger trespassing on my own life. I tried to reason with them. My voice cracked as I said, "This is my home too. I built this life with your father. How can you even think of pushing me out?" But they didn't flinch. My youngest daughter looked away, unable to meet my eyes, while my son repeated the words that cut deeper than any knife. "It's over, Mom. You don't belong here anymore." At that moment, the world I knew shattered. I felt the ground beneath me collapse, leaving me in free fall. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing my children, too, betrayed by the very people I had given everything for. My hands shook as I held on to the armrest of the chair, trying to keep myself from breaking down in front of them. But deep inside, something was already breaking. Neighbors came by that evening to offer their condolences, and I smiled weakly, hiding the storm inside me. They didn't know that behind those closed doors, I had been given an ultimatum. They didn't know that the very children they saw hugging me at the funeral were already planning to throw me out like unwanted furniture. I kept my silence, but my heart screamed louder than ever. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. The morning after that cruel conversation, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the walls that once felt like safety. Now, they felt like prison bars, closing in on me. The air was heavy. My chest was tight. I could barely breathe. I wanted to believe that what happened the night before was just a nightmare, that my children would walk into my room and say, "Mom, we're sorry. We didn't mean it." But deep down, I knew the truth. Their silence told me everything. They had made up their minds. I walked into the kitchen, hoping maybe they had softened their hearts overnight. Instead, I found my belongings stacked in boxes near the door. My dresses folded carelessly, my photo frames wrapped in old newspapers. The smell of coffee filled the air, but there was no warmth in that room, only coldness. My children didn't even look at me. They sat at the table, eating breakfast, laughing lightly, as if nothing had happened. My entire life was being packed away in cardboard boxes, and they didn't even blink. "When will you leave?" my son asked casually, as if he were talking about taking out the trash. His words cut me deeper than a blade. I froze, staring at him. My own son. The boy I had carried in my arms the first day he entered this world. My voice trembled. Is this what I mean to you now? Just someone you can throw away? No one answered. My youngest daughter glanced at me for only a second, then quickly looked down at her plate. I saw her lips tighten. Maybe there was guilt there, or maybe just shame. But neither of them stopped what was happening. They didn't defend me. They didn't care enough. As the hours passed, I felt smaller and smaller. Every time I walked through the house, I saw traces of my life disappearing. My books missing from the shelves, my husband's photographs taken down, the curtains I had sewn with my own hands now tied up, ready to be replaced. It was as if they wanted to erase me, to erase the years I had given, the love I had poured into these walls. I was becoming invisible in my own home. That afternoon, a neighbor came by and whispered, "Are you okay?" I forced a smile and said, "Yes, I'm fine, just organizing some things." I couldn't bear to let anyone know the truth. How could I? How could I admit that my children, the very people I trusted most, were betraying me? Shame wrapped around me like chains. I kept thinking, maybe I failed as a mother. Maybe I gave them too much, or maybe I didn't give them enough. My mind was drowning in questions with no answers. When night came, the house grew quiet. I stood in the living room, staring at the boxes that held the pieces of my life. I touched one of the photo frames, tracing the glass with my fingers. It was a picture of me and my husband, smiling, young, full of dreams. Tears blurred my vision. That photo belonged on the wall, not in a box. That life belonged to me, not stolen away by greed. As I turned, I caught my son watching me from the hallway. His expression was hard, his jaw set. He didn't say a word, but his eyes spoke volumes. Leave. You don't belong here. And in that silence, I finally realized the people I thought would protect me, the ones who should have loved me unconditionally, had already chosen money over blood. They weren't my protectors anymore. They were my enemies. That night, as I lay on the floor, because they had already stripped my bed, I whispered to myself, if they want me gone, fine. But they will regret underestimating me. I felt the sting of betrayal burn in my chest. But underneath that pain, a quiet fire was beginning to grow. A fire that whispered, this is not the end. Not yet. The following days felt like living in a nightmare I could never wake up from. Every corner of the house reminded me of love, but now every memory was poisoned by betrayal. My children no longer spoke to me with warmth. Their voices were sharp, their eyes cold. It was as if I had turned from their mother into nothing more than an unwanted guest. They made sure I felt small. When relatives visited, they spoke over me, deciding what would happen with the house, with the money, with the future, as if I weren't even in the room. I sat silently, my hands folded in my lap, swallowing the lump in my throat, praying no one would notice the tears forming in my eyes. I wanted to scream, this is my life too, but my voice was gone. They had taken even that from me. One afternoon, I walked into the living room only to find strangers there, neighbors, friends of my children, walking through the house like it already belonged to them. My daughter whispered to one of them, we'll change this room, maybe knock down that wall. They were planning renovations. Renovations! Well, I was still living there. It was like watching vultures circle around a body that hadn't even grown cold. The humiliation was unbearable. Every day they reminded me of my place, or rather of the place they believed I no longer had. Mom, "Don't sit there," my son said once, pointing to my favorite chair. "That's not yours anymore." I stood frozen, my heart pounding. That chair had carried the weight of my tired body after long days. It had witnessed my laughter with their father. And now I was forbidden from even touching it. At night, when the house grew quiet, I curled up on the floor with a blanket, too afraid to close my eyes. I could hear their whispers through the walls. Plans about money, about selling things, about how quickly they could push me out. Each word was a dagger, carving away at my heart. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block them out, but the voices grew louder in my mind, louder and louder until all I could hear was, "You are nothing. You are nothing. You are nothing." I began to wonder if they were right. Maybe I was nothing. Maybe I had lost everything. The despair weighed on me like chains, dragging me deeper into darkness. I thought about leaving quietly, disappearing, letting them win. But then, late one night, as the moonlight spilled across the floor, I remembered something, a memory of my husband, a promise he had once made. His voice echoed in my head, "I'll always take care of you, no matter what happens." I whispered those words aloud, clutching my chest as tears streamed down my face. Had he prepared something for me? Could it be that he had left me more than just memories? For the first time in days, a small spark lit up inside me. I didn't know it yet, but that spark would soon turn into a fire strong enough to change everything. The next morning, driven by that small spark of hope, I went into the attic. Dust filled the air as I climbed the old wooden stairs, each step creaking beneath my feet. My children never came up here. This was the one place that still felt like mine. I searched through boxes of forgotten clothes, old photo albums, letters yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I pulled open a drawer of my husband's desk, untouched for years. Inside, wrapped in an envelope, was a stack of papers. My breath caught in my throat. The handwriting on the envelope was his, my husband's. My heart raced as I unfolded the documents. There it was, his will, his final words. My eyes scanned the page, tears blurring the letters. And then I saw it, in bold, clear language. "All property and assets shall belong to my wife." Me! Not them. Me. I gasped, clutching the paper to my chest, sobbing into it like it was his arms holding me once again. My husband hadn't abandoned me. He had protected me even in death. He had known what our children might become, and he made sure I would not be left defenseless. My despair began to transform into something else. Strength, determination. But there was more. Another document, a deed of ownership. The house was in my name. My name. Every wall, every brick, every memory inside those walls legally belonged to me. My lips curved into a bitter smile through my tears. They thought they had won. They thought they had stripped me of everything. But the truth had been here, hidden all along, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. I whispered to myself, "Not yet. They don't deserve to know yet. If I revealed my secret too soon, they would twist it, deny it, try to destroy the evidence. No, I needed to be smart. I needed to be patient. They had humiliated me, broken me, treated me like nothing, but now I held the power, and I was going to use it." As I carefully tucked the documents back into their envelope, I felt my husband's presence in that attic. It was as if he was standing beside me, whispering, "Be strong, fight back." For the first time since his death, I stood tall. My children thought they had erased me, but soon they would. With the truth in my hands, I felt like a different person. The woman who had cried herself to sleep on the cold floor was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had been reborn through pain. But I couldn't let my children know. Not yet. I had to play their game, quietly, patiently, until the right moment came. Each day, I walked through the house with my head bowed, pretending to be weak, pretending to be defeated. My children thought they had broken me completely. They laughed louder, made plans bolder, and treated me like I was already gone. But inside, I was memorizing every word, every insult, every selfish plan they spoke. Every cruel remark was fuel for the storm I was preparing to unleash. At night, when they were asleep, I spread the documents across my bed and read them over and over again. The will, the deed, the proof of everything. My heart pounded with both fear and excitement. This wasn't just about a house. This was about dignity, about respect, about showing them that a mother is not so easily erased. I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone, so I went to see an old family lawyer, someone my husband had trusted. His office smelled of old books and ink, and when I showed him the papers, he adjusted his glasses, his eyes widening. "Mrs. Thompson," he said slowly, "this changes everything. Legally, the house belongs to you. Your husband left it all in your name. They have no claim." Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered, "So I'm not powerless?" He leaned forward, his voice firm. "No. In fact, you are the only rightful owner, and if they continue to harass you, the law will be on your side." Walking out of that office, the sun felt warmer, the world brighter. For the first time in weeks, hope surged through my veins. I had a weapon now, the truth. But more importantly, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront them in anger or desperation. I was going to confront them in court, under the eyes of justice, where their greed would be exposed for all to see. That night, as I locked the documents safely away, I whispered to myself, soon they'll learn that I am not their victim. I am their reckoning. The day finally came. My children had grown careless, arrogant. They believed the house was already theirs, and they filed paperwork to claim it. What they didn't know was that I had already prepared everything. I walked into the courthouse, my hands trembling, but my spirit unshaken. The hallway smelled of polish and paper, and every step echoed like a drumbeat of destiny. Inside the courtroom, my children sat confidently, whispering among themselves, casting smug glances my way. To them, I was just an old woman who had already lost. They didn't realize I was about to take everything back. The judge entered, the gavel struck, and silence fell over the room. Their lawyer spoke first, his words dripping with arrogance. "Your Honor, my clients, the children of the deceased, wish to claim rightful ownership of the family home." My chest tightened, but I held my ground. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood, calm and deliberate. He placed the documents on the table, the will, the deed, proof undeniable. The judge examined the papers carefully. The silence was unbearable, every second stretching into eternity. My children shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For the first time, I saw cracks in their confidence. Finally, the judge looked up, his voice steady. "According to this will and the deed, the house and all assets were left solely to Mrs. Thompson. She is the rightful owner. Case closed." Gasps filled the room. My children's faces turned pale, their mouths opening but no words coming out. They looked at me in disbelief, as if seeing me for the first time.
The mother they thought was weak, powerless, erased, had just defeated them with the truth. My heart swelled, not with pride, but with vindication. Justice had spoken. As I walked out of the courtroom, my children trailed behind me, silent, their heads bowed. For once, I wasn't the one carrying shame. It was theirs to bear now, and I promised myself this was only the beginning of their lesson. Back at the house, everything was different. The walls no longer felt like prison bars. They felt like freedom. My children avoided my eyes, their arrogance shattered. But I wasn't going to let them off easily. I gathered them in the living room, the very place they had once humiliated me, and I said firmly, "Do you remember the day you told me to leave? Do you remember packing my life into boxes and treating me like I was a stranger? Well, today the law reminded you of the truth. This house is mine." They begged, their voices trembling now. "Mom, we're sorry. We didn't mean it. Please forgive us." Tears streamed down their faces, but I had heard enough empty words before. This time, I wanted actions, not apologies. I looked them coldly and said, "Forgiveness is not given with words. It must be earned." I made them put everything back, the photos, the furniture, the memories they had tried to erase. I made them see each piece as a reminder of what they had tried to steal from me. And for the first time, they worked for me instead of against me. Every nail they hammered back into the wall, every frame they returned to its place was a piece of their debt being repaid. But justice wasn't just about the house, it was about respect. I told them, "From now on, if you want to be part of my life, you will treat me as your mother, not as an obstacle. If you cannot do that, then you have no place here." They cried, promising they would change, swearing they had learned their lesson. Maybe they had, or maybe they hadn't. But one thing was certain, they would never look at me the same way again. Weeks later, as I sat once again in my favorite chair, the one they had once forbidden me from touching, I looked around my home. My husband's picture smiled back at me from the wall. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine, truly mine. But it wasn't just the house I had reclaimed. It was my strength, my dignity, my voice. I thought back to the nights I cried on the floor, the days I felt invisible, the moments I believed I was nothing. And I realized those moments were the fire that forged me into something stronger. My children had tried to erase me, but instead, they had awakened a version of me they could never defeat. Looking into the camera, into the eyes of anyone who would listen, I say this: if you ever feel betrayed, if you ever feel erased by the people you love most, remember, your worth does not depend on their acceptance. Sometimes the ones who should protect you are the ones who hurt you, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Stand tall, hold on to your truth, because the truth will always set you free. Today, I live not as a victim, but as a survivor, not as someone discarded, but as someone who rose from the ashes of betrayal. And if my children remember anything from this, let it be this lesson. A mother's love is strong, but a mother's strength is unbroken.